It's the fact that he did not pull a prank. He's notorious for pranks. He'll write pranks out for years, and there was much pranking going on. George Clooney stood by Brad Pitt during his darkest moment in 2016. He made calls every week, showed up when no one else did, and became his lifeline. But 9 years later, their friendship shattered in one night. When George needed Brad most, he vanished. Insiders whispered about tension, about secrets, about something Brad knew but couldn't say. Then in 2025, Brad broke his silence. What he admitted about George and Amal's marriage wasn't just gossip. It was the truth. George had been hiding from the world for years. George Clooney was born on May 6, 1961, in Lexington, Kentucky. His mother, Nina, had once been a beauty queen, but later became a city councilwoman in Augusta. His father, Nick, was always on television, hosting game shows and working as a news anchor. Because of his father's job, the family kept moving around Kentucky and Ohio, which made George feel unsettled. In 1974, they finally settled in Augusta, a small town of just over 1,000 people. They lived in a big old Victorian house where every dinner was filled with talks about politics, Watergate, and the world. From an early age, George was surrounded by debates, strong opinions, and a deep sense of right and wrong. His father often reminded him to always speak up against powerful people and protect the weak. That idea stuck with George as he grew up. George's family wasn't just political. They were famous too. His aunt was Rosemary Clooney, the singer who had a huge hit in 1951 with Come On My House. She was on magazine covers, starred in White Christmas, and by age 19, she was known all over the world. But things didn't last. When rock and roll took over in the late 1950s, Rosemary's voice no longer fit the moment. She was only 24 when her career started to fall apart. She didn't take it well. For almost 40 years, she battled with alcohol and drugs. George moved in with her when he came to Hollywood. He even became her driver during one of her comeback tours. Seeing her struggle, watching her fight to stay relevant, taught him something most people never learn. Fame doesn't last, and if you chase it too hard, it can destroy you. In 1977, when George was just 16, he thought his future would be in sports, not acting. He played both baseball and basketball at Augusta High School, and was so good that he got a tryout with the Cincinnati Reds. The team had just won the World Series, and George truly believed he could join them. He was fast, sharp, and could catch anything, but his throwing arm wasn't strong. Still, he pushed forward. During his second tryout, he held a Louisville Slugger bat, swinging confidently, hitting ball after ball. Then came a curve. It came right at his head, then slipped past for a perfect strike. Everyone laughed. That one pitch shattered his dream. It was a hard lesson. Talent alone wouldn't take him to the top. And that day, baseball was over for him. George grew up in a very religious Catholic home. He went to Blessed Sacrament School and served as an altar boy. He prayed, confessed, and followed the rules. One day, still a little kid, he told the priest during confession that he committed adultery, not even knowing what the word meant. He kept switching schools, St. Michael's, Weston Row, St. Susanna, but the deep religious belief began to fade. By 1998, when he was 37, George admitted he wasn't sure if he believed in heaven or even in God anymore. He said his whole family was extremely Catholic, but he just couldn't believe what he used to. That shift from a devoted altar boy to a man questioning everything came slowly, and by then, it was clear he had changed. When George was around 15, something scary happened. One side of his face suddenly stopped working. He couldn't smile properly. Milk dripped from his mouth. He had developed Bell's palsy. For 9 months, his face stayed like that. It was his freshman year in high school, a time when kids care the most about looks. And George got mocked every day. His classmates laughed. He was the kid with the drooping face. But instead of breaking down, he found a way to survive. He started making jokes about himself before others could. That's when he learned to use humor as a shield. Years later, he said that Bell's palsy was what taught him how to make people laugh, and that sense of humor became one of the strongest tools in his career. After high school, things didn't magically improve. George took a job selling women's shoes. At first, it sounded simple, but soon, it turned into something he hated. Women would lie about their shoe size all the time. Size 10 feet squeezed into size 7 shoes, and George had to pretend it was okay. No one tipped, everyone complained. And worst of all, it felt too personal. Touching people's feet and dealing with their denial left a mark on him. He realized how far people would go to hide the truth from themselves. That job didn't just humble him, it made him uncomfortable in a way he couldn't forget. At 21, George moved to Los Angeles. He had nothing. No car, no job, not even a bed. He slept on the floor of a closet in his friend Tom Matthews's apartment. For 8 months, that tiny closet was home. He worked hard jobs cutting tobacco, doing construction, even selling insurance, door to door. He rode a bike across the city just to get to auditions. But through all that, he didn't give up. That closet became his training ground. He always said it was the best time of his life. Not because it was easy, but because it was real. That time bonded him with Tom forever. And the struggle made every success afterward feel like a miracle. The Bell's palsy didn't just make George tough, it turned him into a prankster. At Augusta High School, he became famous for his tricks. He faked being sick. He glued a kid's shoes to the floor. It wasn't just for fun, it was survival. If people were laughing at his jokes, they weren't laughing at his face. Those years built his personality. That quick wit, that mischievous grin, it all started there. Later, when he played Dr. Doug Ross on Her, that same charm showed through. But it came from a place of pain. His first steps into acting were anything but smooth. In 1978, he got a small role as an extra in the TV miniseries Centennial. No lines, just a face in the background. In 1984, he landed a part in a show called Not, the famous one. This was a sitcom about a hospital. It flopped after one season, but that failure would later help him get cast in The Reeler years later. His next big shot was auditioning for Thelma and Louise. He tried 5 times. The part went to Brad Pitt. Geena Davis, the star, forgot her lines during George's screen test because she was so distracted by Pitt. George later joked to her on a plane, "I hate Brad Pitt because he got the part." That loss hurt, but it didn't stop him. In the mid-1980s, he got a role as a handyman on The Facts of Life. He fixed things, cracked jokes, and lived in the same house as a bunch of teen girls. The show didn't pay much, so he bartended at night. His character had a weird backstory about building hot tubs in Kuwait. When the ratings dropped, George was one of the first to get cut. Directors kept seeing him as just a pretty face with a hammer, and that typecasting almost ruined his acting career. Then came Roseanne. George played Booker Brooks, the supervisor at the factory where Roseanne worked. The show was a hit, but behind the scenes, George wasn't happy. One day, the network sent a giant chocolate bar shaped like the number 1 to celebrate the show's ratings. George told Roseanne they should smash it and send the pieces back. She agreed, but when ABC got the pictures, they were furious. What was meant to be a joke became a serious problem. George's chances with the network vanished. By 1991, he was playing a detective on the show's Sisters 40 episodes. Steady paycheck. But it wasn't enough. He wanted more. In secret, during breaks, he used the studio's cameras to film short movies, trying to learn directing. He didn't tell anyone. On the outside, he joked around with the cast, but inside he was planning his escape. When the show R came along in 1994, he knew this was it. He took the role of Dr. Doug Ross and left Sisters behind. That moment changed everything. That moment changed everything. George Clooney spent years trying to get noticed, and by 1994, he was just another actor with a string of forgettable roles. He had done strange movies like Combat Academy in 1986 and Return of the Killer. Tomatoes in 1988. Most people wouldn't have imagined that he'd become one of the biggest stars in the world. But something shifted when he read just one scene for a show called There were only 5 weeks left before filming, and casting was moving fast. Clooney could have gone with another NBC show about lawyers, but the script felt stronger to him. The moment he walked out of that audition, they already knew he was the one. They didn't need a second look. That's how Dr. Doug Ross was born, a pediatric emergency doctor who would later change the way people saw medical dramas forever. At first, Doug Ross was meant to be just one of the doctors, but as the show aired, people couldn't stop talking about him. They loved how he looked, how he acted, how he seemed broken yet full of heart. Test audiences asked for more scenes between him and Carol Hathaway, played by Juliana Margulies. NBC quickly noticed. They were already spending $13 million per episode, which was unheard of for a TV drama at the time, but it paid off. Ratings soared to 27 million viewers, and people kept tuning in week after week. Even in 2009, when Clooney returned for just a guest appearance in the final episodes, ad prices jumped from $135,000 to $500,000. For just 30 seconds, that's how strong the Doug Ross effect was. And for Clooney, that role didn't just make him famous, it gave him the momentum to take over Hollywood. But success came with a price. In 1996, while he was filming Clooney also shot From Dusk Till Dawn with Quentin Tarantino. It was a vampire film full of blood and action, completely different from the hospital scenes he did during the week. He played Seth Gecko, a violent bank robber who ends up in a Mexican strip club filled with vampires. The stunts were intense with wooden stakes, bloody fights, and chaotic scenes. He had to kill Tarantino's character in a brutal climax. Managing both jobs meant Clooney was working 18-hour days, constantly switching from dramatic hospital scenes to horror movie mayhem. He barely slept, but somehow kept the heartthrob image alive. By season 3 of VR, he was earning $25,000 per episode. It kept climbing as his movie career grew, but the non-stop filming eventually wore him down. In 1999, after 5 seasons, Clooney told the producers he was done. He didn't want to keep pushing through endless hours on set. He wanted to focus on films. The show gave him a graceful exit. Doug Ross resigned and moved to Seattle. Fans were heartbroken, but they understood. Clooney had already outgrown the small screen, even though his acting was serious. Behind the scenes, Clooney was always up to something. His pranks were legendary. He once sent fake acting lesson tapes to Meryl Streep just for fun. He filled trailers with rubber snakes. Juliana Margulies was one of his favorite targets. During the 1996 Emmy Awards, he and Anthony Edwards presented an award together, keeping their charm even under the spotlight. Despite 3 nominations for UA, Clooney never won an Emmy. But nobody forgot his performance. It was the beginning of a new kind of TV stardom, one that crossed into movies, politics, and global fame. In 2001, Clooney met Brad Pitt on the set of Ocean's 11, and a new chapter began. Their friendship turned into a prank war that spread across years. When they were filming Ocean's 12 in Lake Como in 2004, Pitt went all in. He posted fake signs around Clooney's hometown, telling locals to call him Mr. Ocean or Daddy Ocean and not to look him in the eye. Italian newspapers ran with it. People believed it. Clooney later admitted he couldn't top that one and spent years trying to get revenge. That prank became one of the most talked about Hollywood stories ever. That same boldness followed him into directing. In 2002, Clooney directed Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. It was based on the life of Chuck Barris, a game show host who claimed he was also a CIA assassin. Sam Rockwell played the lead, but behind the scenes, things weren't smooth. The screenwriter, Charlie Kaufman, had worked on the script for years. He was angry when Clooney rewrote large parts without telling him. Kaufman later said he didn't think Clooney cared about the deeper parts of the story. Even so, the film got good reviews, an 80% Rotten Tomatoes score, and Rockwell won Best Actor at the Berlin Film Festival. But Kaufman never worked with a big studio again. Then in 2007, another fight broke out, this time with the Writers Guild. Clooney claimed he rewrote nearly the entire script for Leather, a football comedy, but the Guild disagreed and denied him screen credit. Furious, Clooney took a rare step. He quit full membership in the WGA and went financial core, which let him keep working, but stripped his voting rights and benefits. That move shocked Hollywood. It showed how even someone as respected as Clooney could clash hard with the system. In 2009, he starred in The Men Who Stare at Goats, a strange war comedy about psychic soldiers. He played a man who believed he had telekinetic powers. The film made $69.1 million on a $24 million budget. Not a blockbuster, but not a flop either. It premiered in Venice, got mixed reviews, and slowly became a cult favorite. But his biggest movie that year was Up in the Air, where he played a man who fired people for a living. That role got him his second Oscar nomination for Best Actor. The movie hit hard during the 2008 recession, when unemployment was at 10%. Critics said it was the best performance of his career. He didn't win. The Oscar went to Jeff Bridges, but the nomination locked in Clooney as a serious actor with real depth. In 2007, Clooney and his close friends Brad Pitt, Don Cheadle, and Matt Damon created a group called Not on Our Watch. Their mission was to stop violence in places like Darfur. In 2012, Clooney got arrested outside the Sudan embassy in Washington, D.C. while protesting against human rights abuses. He was 50 at the time. His dad, Nick, who was 78, got arrested too. They were both handcuffed and charged with disorderly conduct. That wasn't just for show. Clooney had already testified before the Senate and met with President Obama that same week. Then in October 2025, at 64 years old, Clooney gave one of the rawest interviews of his life. In Esquire, he admitted he had tried cocaine back in 1982. He said everyone joked about it then, but looking back he saw how dangerous it really was. He described how it was often mixed with mannitol, a baby laxative, and people would do a line, then run to the bathroom. He also shared how he used to drink every night during certain years, but never became addicted. One of his wildest memories was making pot brownies with 20 friends and watching The Wizard of Oz, with Dark Side of the Moon playing. No one said a word all night. They just sat there until the sun came up. In 1999, while filming Three Kings, Clooney got into a physical fight with director David O. Russell. He had seen Russell scream at crew members, and one day he couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed him by the throat and shouted, "You're a bully." It became one of Hollywood's ugliest on-set clashes. Years later, in a 2024 interview, Clooney still called him a miserable fiend and said, "Working with people like that just wasn't worth it anymore." In 2017, Clooney's anger turned toward the press. A French magazine called Voici published photos of his newborn twins, Alexander and Ella. Paparazzi had climbed trees and fences to take the pictures through the windows of his Lake Como home. Clooney didn't hold back. He promised legal action and said, "The safety of our children demands it." The magazine claimed it was public interest because people loved George Clooney. But for Clooney, it crossed a line he never forgave. In 2024, Clooney shook up politics. Just weeks after hosting a $30 million fundraiser for Joe Biden, he wrote a brutal op-ed in the New York Times. He said he loved Biden, but it was time for a new nominee. He believed Biden couldn't win in November after his disastrous debate performance on June 27. His words hit hard. "We are not going to win in November with this president." Biden dropped out of the race on July 21. Only 11 days after Clooney's article, Clooney later said it was the most selfless thing Biden had done since George Washington. But in the end, Donald Trump still won the election. That all started back in 1991, when both George Clooney and Brad Pitt were chasing the same breakout role in Thelma and Louise. But Pitt got it. That moment quietly lit the spark of rivalry. Years passed, and by the time they worked together on Ocean's 11 in 2001, things could have gone either way. But instead of friction, something unexpected happened. During filming in Italy, Pitt played a prank. He spread fake signs around town saying George only wanted to be called Daddy Ocean, and no one should look him in the eye. The locals believed it. Clooney could have been mad, but he wasn't. That prank did something strange. It broke the ice. From then on, their bond kept growing. By 2008, on the set of Burn After Reading, they were pulling full-blown prank wars. Clooney rigged Pitt's trailer with whoopee cushions.